This is a hearing of the Committee of Adjustment for the Town of Pelham. Everyone present will be given an opportunity to comment on the applications being heard. Please address your comments and questions through the chair. This public meeting has been called to satisfy the requirements of the Planning Act and Council bylaws. Notice of this meeting has been given by prepaid first-class mail to all persons listed as owners on the last revised assessment roll within 60 meters, 200 feet, of the subject property. In addition, a public notice sign has been posted on the lands. Agencies commenting on the applications may request that certain conditions be imposed should an application be approved. Voicing objections to these conditions will not adversely affect the committee's decision. The process. The purpose of the application and relative correspondence will be heard, followed which the applicant will be given an opportunity to address the application. Any person concerned with the application will then be given an opportunity to speak. Please state your name and mailing address for the record. At the conclusion of the discussion, the committee will render a decision and advise of any applicable conditions. Specific wording for the conditions will be determined by the committee following the public portion of this hearing. All interested parties are invited to be present. Copies of the decisions or the decision will be mailed to the applicant or agent and to any other person who files a written request. There are colored forms in the back table for this purpose which are available. Okay, please fill one out if you want a copy of the decision, and the clerk's department will make sure you get one. Any person, corporation, or public body has a right to appeal either the decision itself or the conditions of consent to the local appeal body within 20 days of the decision for minor variances and within 20 days of the mailing of the decision for consent application, which is what we're dealing with today. The hearing panel consists of Mr. John Clausen to my far left, Mr. Bernie Law to my near left, and I am Don Cook. Does any member of the panel have a pecuniary interest in accordance with the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act of any of the applications to be considered at this hearing?
I do not.
I do not.
And I do not, Madam Secretary. Madam Secretary, are there any requests for withdrawal or adjournment of any of the application for today?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, there is not.
Is there anyone interested in this application? Is the applicant present? Would you please join us at the table on this side?
Mr. Chair, I'm actually the agent for the applicant.
Yes. Madam Secretary, you want to read a summary of the presentation?
Committee of Adjustment hearing, Tuesday, October 1st, 2019. Please note, no decisions have been made prior to this public meeting. This presentation is based upon the Town of Pelham's Planning Department report and analysis. All comments received from commenting agencies and the public have been forwarded in full to the Committee of Adjustment members for their consideration. Application for consent, file B8/2019P, 82, 84, 90 Canberra Road. The subject parcel shown as Part 2 on the attached sketch is an interior portion of the subject property, Parts 1 and 2, lying west of Pelham Street, north of Highway 20, known municipally as 82, 84, 90 Canberra Road in the town of Pelham. Application is made for consent to partially discharge a mortgage, to mortgage/charge, and to convey 1,720 meters square of land, Part 1, for continued multi-residential use, being 82 and 84 Canberra Road. 2,000 meters square of land, Part 2, is to be retained for the continued use of a triplex dwelling known as 90 Canberra Road. To date, the following comments have been received. Building Department, no comments. Public Works, ensure both lots are serviced with individual 20mm water services and 125mm sanitary sewer laterals in accordance with town standards. Installation of any missing services will require temporary works permits to be obtained and approved by the Public Works Department at the applicant's expense and to the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works. Locate cards must also accompany the installation of any new services. Submit a drawing indicating the location of individual water services and sanitary laterals to both lots, confirming no existing water or sanitary laterals cross the proposed lot line servicing another parcel or private property. Public comments. Frank and Ida Toss, September 23rd, 2019. Oppose construction of any new rental housing. No new building construction is proposed. It is noted the property is zoned RM2, Residential Multi 2, which permits apartment dwellings, and redevelopment could hypothetically take place without the need for any severance application. Planning staff is of the opinion that the proposed severance is appropriate and note that no new development is proposed at this time. Any new development would be subject to potential Planning Act approvals. In planning staff's opinion, the application is consistent with provincial policy statement and conforms to provincial, regional, and local plans. Planning staff recommend that the consent notice file B8/2019P be granted. The following conditions are suggested: that the applicant ensure both lots are serviced with individual 20-millimeter water services and 125-millimeter sanitary sewer laterals in accordance with town standards. Installation of any missing services will require temporary works permits to be obtained and approved by the Public Works Department at the applicant's expense and to the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works. Locate cards must also accompany the installation of any new services. Submit a drawing indicating the location of individual water services and sanitary laterals to both lots, confirming no existing water or sanitary laterals cross the proposed lot line servicing another parcel of private property. The Secretary-Treasurer be provided with a registrable legal description of the subject parcel, together with a copy of the deposited reference plan, if applicable, for the use and issuing of the certificate of consent. The final certification fee of $387 payable to the Treasurer, Town of Pelham, to be submitted to the Secretary-Treasurer. All costs associated with fulfilling conditions of the consent shall be borne by the applicant.
I'm sorry, I missed your name.
My name's Al Haywood. I'm with J.D. Barnes Surveying. I'm the applicant's agent for this.
Thank you. Do you have anything to add to the planning report and the comments read by our secretary?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With regard to the report, my client's in concurrence with it. We have no objections to the conditions that have been imposed. With regard to the severance itself, there are no new buildings. I just wanted to reiterate that for the people in the public. This has really just been brought upon the Lavelles, Carol Lavelle in particular, that they're looking to get a lump sum payout now on the residents rather than keep it going as a rental, and would like to sell that particular parcel.
Thank you, Mr. Haywood. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to ask a question or have any comment with regard to the application? Please state your name and could you please come to the microphone in front of the dais, please? And start over, because we'd like to make sure I get your name.
My name is Bruce Clark, and I live at 80 Canberra Road. And now I've forgotten what my question was, or my comment. My concern is that it's listed as a multi-unit property. Dense, whatever. The reason I really here is that, or not really here, but the reason I wanted to ask is which property is it that wants to be sold?
Okay, the parcel we're dealing with today.
Or is it 90?
Okay, the parcel we're dealing with today is called Part 1, if you look on the sketch.
Which is 8284.
So that's the parcel that's being severed from, or that's the parcel we're discussing today.
Severed.
Yeah. So it's actually being I guess severed
It's the one
from
that
the,
sides on my property.
hmm?
It's the one that sides on my property.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that would be correct. Like, she's the adjoining owner.
So that's the part that wants to be sold, that side.
It's being severed. I can't tell you what the applicant's intentions are, but
Mr. Chair, if I could answer that. The intention is to sever off Part 1. Currently, Part 1 and Part 2 make up one parcel of land. And the owner wishes to now sell 8284.
Right.
And to do that, they need to sever, create a property line to divide that property.
Okay, so it is to be sold.
That's my understanding. Whether it happens, I don't know. But their intention is to put it up for sale after they sever it.
so currently you have 2 dwelling units on one piece of property. So
Right.
now we're going to have 1 dwelling unit on each piece of property,
No,
except for the parcel in the back, which is going to have the apartment building from what I get from the sketch.
at the moment, there's a house which is 82, and behind it is a garage with a rental unit above it, which is 84. It's a garage. with a
Anyway,
flat
what's going to happen is the garage and the 1.5-story dwelling called number 82
Right.
are going to be severed. Now, whether,
They're very close to each other.
yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the proposal is to sever Part 1, which contains I just want to get the drawing in front of me, 'cause I can't see that one from here.
It contains,
So it contains the 1.5-story dwelling number 82. It also contains a 2-car garage with a dwelling over top number 84, to be separated from Part 2, which contains the 2-story dwelling known as number 90, Canberra Road. The lands to the south, Part 3, are other lands owned by the applicant, but they are already a separate lot. So this proposal is to divide Part 1 from Part 2, and it is the intent of the applicant to sell Part 1.
does that answer your question?
I guess so. There may be more, but that's it for now.
Yes? Could you come up?
I can speak very loudly without the mic, but it's just basically, it's Vera Morrison.
Okay.
I have the same question that this lady's referring to, but maybe I can phrase it just a little differently. If they're going to sever that, because there are 2 dwellings on there now, and you have 2 municipal addresses. So how can you have 2 separate municipal addresses on one lot if you allow that garage dwelling to be left there? Right?
As a rental unit.
Yeah.
To answer that question, I'll refer to our planner, Mr. Curtis Thompson.
Through the chair. It's actually not uncommon at all to have multiple addresses on any one property. The purpose of the civic addresses is for mail purposes and 911. And in fact, when you get into multi-unit buildings and you have multiple units, the municipality we're not that interested in the individual addresses of the unit numbers, more just the civic address of the property in its entirety. So in this case, like, those addresses just exist and they would just continue to exist regardless of where the lot lines are drawn.
So then that building would stay, that garage, basically back there that has rental
Unless
dwelling
they
above it?
were to come in for a demolition permit, yeah, like, the addresses would not change. The only time the addresses would change is if a driveway was being removed and or some combination of the front door was being altered. That's usually the grounds for where we would assign a civic address to where the front door or the driveway is, one of the two.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Haywood?
Hi, my name is Cindy Pitt, and I guess my question is, so you're not interested at all in 90?
Mr. Chair, nothing is happening with this site at all, just a division in the land. If it could put the public at ease, in the report, it actually says that this piece of land is,
Historical.
well, no, it says that it could be developed with 11 units. Now, that's not going to happen, and this division of land will make this harder to develop. And it's actually a good thing for you as neighbors, in my opinion, if you don't want to see development there.
The reason I don't want to see development there is because that's a historical house that is older than this town.
Oh, you're referring to number 90.
Yeah,
Nothing is happening with, through you, Mr. Chair, nothing is happening with number 90.
and I would like that recorded, that the property is historical and that should remain
Through you,
so.
Mr. Chair, I never came across any historical designation on this property. Maybe the planner would know.
Through the chair, it's not a designated heritage property under Part 4 of the Heritage Act. I don't know if it's, the town has a list of potential properties that have been inventoried about a year or two ago we had with the student. So I think it's an 1800s house, so there's a good chance that it's been identified as a potential property. But at the moment, it's not a designated property under Part 4 of the Heritage Act.
So Mr. Thompson has basically said that the town seems to recognize that it is a very old building, but currently it's not registered as a historical building, okay, under the act. Is that correct, Curtis?
Correct, yeah. It might change in the future, but at the moment, it's not currently designated.
It's not designated a heritage building within the town of Pelham's bylaws currently.
Heritage remain protected, right?
If it were designated as a heritage building by the town,
Yes.
then it's my understanding it would be protected.
But historical buildings are not necessarily protected? Because there's two, right, there's two terms, historical and heritage?
It's not designated as either.
I know it's not, I know.
Through the chair, I guess calling something historical would be more of a loose term. Like I'm speaking to under the definitions of the Ontario Heritage Act and the jurisdiction that that provincial statute would have over protecting historical buildings, whether they be cultural landmarks or landscape culture, stuff like that. The town does have intentions on designating more properties, but I guess it hasn't really been that big of a priority for municipal council. At the moment, I can't say anything else other than it's not a designated property in our records under Part 4.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Panel, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I have one. Mr. Thompson, Curtis, through the chair, right now, I heard this gentleman say you could have an 11-unit apartment on Part 2. For that to happen, they would have to demolish number 90 and build a new place, correct? Or can they put an 11-unit apartment on that land and have another building on there?
Through the chair, that part of the report is explaining how the lot provisions work under the RM2 zone, which is currently in effect on that property. The short answer is it depends, but in terms of that isolated regulation on its own could hypothetically yield 11 units. And that's a number that will apply regardless of whether or not these properties are severed or if they're together. If they're together, it's whatever the two numbers are, 11 plus 13. If they're separate, it's 11 or 13. It's just the lot area divided by the requirement. Now, that being said, any proposed development on this property would be bound by site plan control, which is an agreement between council and the developer or the owner. And a site plan control application provides the municipality some assurance that the development will take place in a certain way. It's a technical review between staff and the owner's consultants, looking at things like curbing, driveways, parking, building elevations, trees, landscaping, stuff like that. And it would require council's approval before a building permit can be issued.
Can I ask another follow-up to that? So when you go to site plan, these people know that they would be notified that this is going on or not? They wouldn't be involved, they wouldn't have any chance to make any comment on what is being proposed?
Through the chair, the site plan control clauses of the Planning Act don't require it to be a public process. There's no circulation requirements for a site plan application, as it's actually just an agreement between a landowner and the municipality. That being said, it does go to council for approval, so it is on the record. The plans and the agreements are part of the record. There's just no public notification. Also, I say it depends, because if they were to come in with an application and there's a zoning issue like a setback or something wrong with the lot area, then that would trigger a public notification process. So that depends, like if what the plan is, basically.
So, I'm sorry, so potentially 23 units could be built on that property, 11 and 13?
Through the chair, in terms of the lot area regulation, section 7.2 B or C, just for lot area, that is what the lot would yield, because it's such a large parcel. That's purely just that one provision, but there are several other provisions that would have to comply for the building to be permitted.
If you have a comment, I wish you'd come to the microphone, because we really do need to keep track of that. Are there any other questions? Mr. Haywood, do you want to offer anything else?
No, Mr. Chairman, I think we're satisfied with the report.
Any comments from the committee members? Are we ready to?
I do not.
Okay, are we ready to render a decision?
Mr. Chair, are you certain that there's no one further from the audience?
Anybody else from the audience wish to comment on the applications? Yes, please come forward, state your name, your address.
Gary Tracy, and we have the lot on the lower right of the diagram there at 109 Delview Drive. So from what I've heard, or in quotation marks, because my hearing is not that great anymore, from what I've heard, that no new construction is planned as of this moment.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct.
Thank you. Now, this is a matter of interest. This doesn't concern us directly, but if I may point out something here. This is our lot on Delview Drive, so the back of our lot looks directly in part one. And from our kitchen window, we can see this building, which used to be a chicken coop and is now a rental property. I note here that the proposed severance is a tongue of land going between our back fence and the chicken coop where this small rental property. This raises the question of this, if this section of land belongs to part two, where are the tenants in this building going to park? At present, they park right here. Just a matter of interest.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the lot is significantly large that parking could be provided anywhere on there. It may change.
It doesn't affect us, but it's just curious. Yeah.
There actually is enough room beside that building for a car with those. It could, with a single car there.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hayward, thank you. Are there any other questions or concerns from the public? Are we ready to render a decision on this? Can I have a mover?
I'll move that we accept the consent as written.
I'll second that move.
Yeah. We recommend that file B8 219
Yeah.
82, 84, 90 Canberra Road be granted?
Yeah.
Subject to conditions, Mr.
Well, yeah, the standard, I mean, you're gonna create two parcels, 82 and 84, and then you're gonna have the second parcel, 90 Canberra Road, that's gonna be 0.2 hectares. The only thing is that upon granting you, the conditions, they have to, one is they have to ensure both lots have individual 3/4 inch water services and 6-inch sanitary sewer, I should go metric, 20 millimeters and water service and 125 millimeter sanitary lateral lines. And that they should check to see if there's any missing services that require work permits, and that they be approved by the Public Works at the applicant's expense and to the satisfaction of Director of Public Works, and that locate cards must also accompany the installation of any new services. And the second thing is that they have to make sure that they do a drawing that shows where these services are located and the depth to which they have been placed, and that they don't cross or interfere with any other services on the private property. And also, they have to satisfy the Secretary Treasurer and provide a legal description of the two parcels that can be, together with a copy of deposit reference plans for the use of issuance of the certificate of consent. And the fourth is a final certificate of fee of $387 paid to the Treasurer, Town of Pelham, and be submitted to the Secretary Treasurer. All costs associated with fulfilling conditions of consent shall be borne by the applicant. So moved. Oh, yeah, okay.
Mr. Chairman, just one point of clarification, that the moving of the application as it is with the conditions, the depth of the services was not mentioned as a condition in the report, and that requires ground penetrating radar to determine that. So most locates, they locate the horizontal location of the services, and most require hand digging in those locations for any services. So I would just ask that, that the committee member that mentioned depth just refer to the condition as it's stated in the report.
Well, having experience in the depth is just as important as the location horizontally, like on the plane. My experience is the biggest problems I have, we don't know how deep, and that's where the biggest problems are.
Through you, Mr. Chair, then the member is requesting for us to dig it up, just for clarification.
I would call it daylighting. Daylighting of the water service. The water service won't be too bad. You can measure down the curb stop.
Right.
Sanitary sewer. My experience is I tend to agree with Mr. Clausen. I would prefer that the sanitary, you might be able to find where the sanitary sewer goes through or under the foundation wall of the house. You could give a location, you could give a depth there. You also should be able to pick up a depth in the sewer itself. I guess what we don't know is there a gooseneck. So preferably, you should be able to at least get a good horizontal position, and 4 hours in a vacuum truck, not that bad. I would tend to agree with Mr. Clausen on this, that it should be daylighted at the property line. I would even say at the property line.
Yes, Mr. Chair. However, we are not adding any new buildings here. There's no excavation going to happen.
Okay.
So we have a working situation now. If the services are separate as regard to the property lines, what is this going to accomplish?
I guess what we're trying to get to is that if a new sanitary sewer service needs to be installed, because maybe the two buildings are serviced off of Y currently, we don't know.
Mr. Chair, could we put a qualifier to it then, that if new services are required, we put a depth to it?
I could agree to that.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the Public Works Department has done a thorough review of the application, and they have made their requests they are the ones that need to sign off at the end. So it would be to the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works, who is a professional engineer.
Yes.
So if you do add any wording to their requested conditions, I would suggest that it be to the satisfaction of the Director of Engineering.
It has to be to the satisfaction of the Director of Engineering.
That's
yes,
correct.
no matter
But-
what.
But to add something over and above what they have requested on their review, could put the municipality and the applicant in a difficult situation where it might be a condition that cannot be satisfied. So I would caution the wording, because our engineer has looked at this and knows what the municipal requirements are.
The condition that I read is the installation of any missing services will require temporary works permits to be obtained and approved by the Public Works Department at the applicant's expense and to the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works. Locate cards must be accompany the installation of any new services. So the location card would have to have an elevation on it. And it's really speaking to new services if they're required.
Yes, but that, Mr. Chairman, that's not how the member worded the condition.
So basically, we're asking for the same condition.
Yeah.
So we can live with the condition as printed on page 5 of the planning report?
Yeah, I can, I just want to caution for the town that we make sure, because I find that 90% of the time it's missing, and that's where most of your problems are.
So guess what? My experience in 43 years in municipal, same thing.
Okay.
Okay, we've had a mover and a seconder. Are we ready to take a vote on this one? All in favor? Carried.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Haywood, thank you very much for attendance. Thank you very much for coming and offering your comments and suggestions. And with that, we need to continue on with our agenda. Minutes for approval, the minutes of June the 5th.
Thank you.
Seeing all three of us were here, can I have a mover for the acceptance of the minutes of the meeting of Wednesday, June the 5th, as prepared?
I've gone through it, and I move that we accept them.
Seconder? All in favor? Carried.
The committee's still conducting business. Oh, I'm sorry.
Can I have a motion for adjournment? Mr. Law?
Yes.
Would you move adjournment?
Move it, sure.
All in favor?
Okay.
Carried.